Ex-teachers professors of Reddit, what was your frick this moment? I was subbing for a class that integrated some of the special education students for 2 hours a day. We were having a holiday party, so the kids got to push their desks together and have snacks and watch a movie. I'm sitting at the desk grading papers when I hear the class getting kind of noisy. I ask what's going on and someone mentions that Trevor doesn't like this part of the movie. Trevor is a 12-year-old boy on the autism spectrum. He's a very large boy, about 6'0" and well over 200 pounds. I tell Trevor to come on over to my desk and he does. He says he doesn't like when people sing in movies and starts covering his ears. I tell him I will fast forward this part and he flips his crap. Apparently, he hates fast forwarding more than he hates singing in movies. He picks up a desk and whips it against the wall near a set of windows. Flips over every desk he can get his hand on, all while screaming like someone is attacking him. He's just trashing the room and starts going after the kids. I yell for one of the kids to run and get his main teacher and another to get the principal. Trevor pushes a few kids hard enough to make them fall down and then grabs a girl by throat and starts choking her. He has a look on his face of a madman and he's sweating profusely and turning red while this girl is trying to fight him off. I get over there and am able to pry his hands off with the help of a few students. Trevor then turns to me and in a crazy, deep voice says, "I will find your house and hide under your bed until you come home. I will violate and murder you," and laugh while I'm doing it. His teacher came in and was able to pull him away and Trevor just stared at me the entire way out laughing like crazy. It was scary as frick. I was an adjunct, at the bottom of the totem pole, and got my class assignments last and only if the more senior people everyone had gotten their minimum number of classes. They'd hold off on this until the literal last minute, and I'd find out if I was teaching 3 days before the semester started. For the last 2 or 3 years, I was only teaching online and only in the summer. During that time I moved away and started a business, so it was all fine with me. The last summer, I got 2 classes I'd never taught before with about a month before they started. I had to learn a totally new subject for one, and remember stuff I hadn't looked at since grad school for the other. They almost took one class away from me after I'd busted my butt to prepare for it, because nobody else's classes were filling up. The other class had 6 people in it. I was told I could teach it prorated, for 6/11ths of the usual rate, and I refused. I didn't have time to learn that stuff, teach 2 classes, and keep my business going. I was told I could teach it prorated, for 6/11ths of the usual rate, and I refused. Even for adjuncting, this is a new level of shitbaggery. You don't teach less just because there are fewer students in the class. My wife is a teacher. She started in the UK public sector, but left after 8 years. After a few months break, she went into private education. There wasn't any one thing that led her to quit. It was working in a system that, over 8 years, saw 3 curriculum changes, 2 exam changes, and 3 changes to the inspection process. A system that demanded more and more from the staff while cutting funding and freezing pay. Where she'd get to work at 7 AM and leave at 6 PM, do some work at home, and spend almost every Sunday marking or planning or both, just to keep afloat. A system that was constantly narrowing its scope and becoming ever more inflexible, to the detriment of the children she was teaching, where her choice was either to teach her students to pass the exam, but deprive them of useful mathematical knowledge and critical thinking skills, or to teach them these skills, but run the risk of them doing poorly in their exams. This would jeopardize not only those kids, but future pupils as well, because poor exam results would bring the school's rating down, leaving it open to being taken over by an academy chain, which would be even worse. It was a system that took an enthusiastic and excellent teacher, ground her down and stretched her so thin she basically had a breakdown and almost left teaching forever. I am the version of your wife who left teaching forever. Every single thing you've written. These are my exact reasons. I didn't make 8 years though. I didn't even finish my NQT. I've been making minimum wage ever since and I never regret it. My wife got contacted about applying for a job out of state. I encouraged her to do so. My thoughts were, I have a year and a half of teaching experience and a master's degree in teaching from an R1 research institution. This will be easy. It was not easy. I was told I could not teach in the subject that I was fully certified and held a degree in my current state, despite reading stories about shortages and emergency certifications in my field. But I could probably make it work in another field if I took 6-7 classes. I now work another job that I don't really like, though I can get those 6-7 classes for mostly free if I want them. The problem is starting over as a teacher, again, would be a decent sized pay cut, and trying to convince myself to deal with the overall low societal respect for teachers is tough when the whole process has just exacerbated my depression for 3 years. I have to. Early in my career, I had students who were plagiarizing lab reports. I turned them in, mostly because I felt I had to. The school made a huge freaking deal about cheating and had an academic honesty pledge statement students wrote on every test. One set of parents screamed at me over the phone. Next thing I know, I had a meeting with the vice principal who said they didn't want the cheating to interfere with the students' future, and he ripped up all the plagiarism reports I wrote that year. My second time saying frick this was based on the cumulative effects of being unsupported by the school. They changed which courses I was teaching and the grade level. We had a construction project going on, so there was constant noise, including beeping and drilling, even when they promised it wouldn't be during the school day. That was a lie. Stupid school-wide initiatives, more pointless meetings, incompetent high-ups. It's the adults in the system that make it hard to be a teacher. The kids are generally not the problem. I left during the first month into spring semester at a poor rural high school. It was my first year teaching. Went from professional life to teaching through a state program. Absolutely no support from the administration. One class had over 30 students, another had half the class as troublemakers who would not calm down. Had a bomb threat, a gun found on a kid, a student death, and a teacher fired for an inappropriate relationship with a student all before Thanksgiving break. A quarter of the teaching staff was new. 2 people in my department had already left. Several teachers had already quit, and the interim principal and administration were refusing to help teachers with anything, and actually blamed us. I'm trying to hang on. I'm hating every day of my life, and I'm thinking that all I need to do is make it through 1 year and I can do something else. Then early February, the principal calls me in and tells me that he thinks that I'm not a good fit, and at the end of the year I will need to go to another school or I will be terminated. In the real world, you don't tell someone you're fired but stay on for a few more months and then expect them to stick around. I was out of there and thankful for it, although it hurt to abandon my fellow teachers and the students. Also, I had 1 teacher of the month during the fall semester, so I couldn't have been that bad. They had done this because I refused to fill out a slip of paper indicating if I would be staying on for next year. This was basically, verbatim, my second year teaching. I left in February and believed I was done with education. 2 years later I got a job teaching overseas and love it. Amazing how much admin impacts your life. Good riddance. I caught a kid selling drugs in the hallway and turned him in. He threatened to kill me with an ice pick. He was super unstable and volatile, and had a criminal record, so I didn't doubt that he might try it. The principal refused to remove him from my class because he has the right to have an education. My other students took it upon themselves to escort me through the school in between classes and walk me to my car after school in a big huddle so Ice Pick Boy couldn't get to me. Frick that. Why I didn't contact the police. I actually did. We had PDs stationed in the school, but nothing happened because the kid's mom was a cop and she pulled strings to have the whole thing quashed. I didn't file a union grievance because it was almost the end of the school year. That crap takes time, and I decided to quit and move far, far away instead. Also, to everyone telling me I shouldn't have ratted on the kid and snitches get stitches, I get it. You're edgy. But it was literally my job to help these kids become functioning adults, and selling drugs in front of your teacher is definitely an indication that you're heading down the wrong path. I actually could have lost my job if I didn't report him. No regrets. It's nice that your other students were nice enough to do that. I started teaching in 2008 when everything went to heck. I skipped student teaching and was hired as an intern. Got fabulous reviews, was loved by the kids and admin, and found out mid-March I was being laid off with about 150 other teachers in the district. Got rehired 2 weeks into the next school year, even though they knew about the position for the entire summer, at a different school. Did great there, got their computer-based instruction class up and running while still teaching English. Got laid off that March. It broke my heart and they once again offered me another different school that was an absolute heckhole. I left and worked other jobs for years, moved around, enjoyed my 20s, met my now husband and came back to teaching. My old district happily hired me again, and promptly laid me off again. Then hired me on a temporary contract which was illegal, but my union was so worried about getting raises that year they didn't care or help. Finally got tenure in that district and ended up getting a job offer at a much better district and left. I've been teaching 7 years and only one of those years I didn't have to completely take down my classroom at the end of the school year. Luckily my new district does everything it can to not have to lay off and I just got my tenure. A kid stabbed himself, on purpose, in his hand during a speech. 2 things destroyed me. 1. The kid was suspended over a weapons violation. To wit, hey, obviously self-destructive kid desperate for attention. Go be alone in your house for a week. And 2. The administration demanded I explain why I hadn't seen this coming, since he had signed up to do a speech on how to bandage a wound. So clearly his maniacal plan was to shove a small pen knife through his hand while in front of the class, like you do. I had a religion teacher in high school named Mr. Wen, who was working on becoming a Jesuit priest and was a really cool guy. There was a kid in my class who was an annoying smart butt, but Mr. Wen was always really patient with him, until one day he pushed him too far. I forgot exactly what the kid said, but it definitely crossed the line. Mr. Wen slammed his fists on his desk and shouted, "Why can't you ever shut the frick up?" He then picked up his stapler and chucked it at the kid, missing his head by a few inches and leaving a huge dent in the wall, and then stormed out into the hallway. There was another religion teacher down the hall who heard the commotion and talked to Mr. Wen in the hall for a while to calm him down. He didn't give up on teaching, but it was a pretty extreme frick this moment I witnessed. When I found kids labeled proficient were actually 1, 2, or 3 years behind. Advanced included average kids. Parents are not told the truth about student performance levels. This, in a US premier school system. Mine wasn't so much a bad frick this moment. I used to teach developmentally delayed kids and it was awesome. The one moment that sticks out the most was when we were doing a lesson on dinosaurs. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, the kids were having a blast pretending to be dinosaurs, so we just said frick the lesson and had dinosaur day. Pretty much the whole day was spent acting like dinosaurs and doing dinosaur things. That sounds like fun. It's not for me though. I worked at an elementary school as a paraprofessional. We had a 9-year-old psychopath. The day he was kicked out, pulled out by mom, was the best day of that year. The whole year in general sucked. We had 13 kids and only 2 head teachers, plus 2 paras, including myself. We had that psycho kid to deal with as well as several other highly behavioral kids. We had one of the head teachers leave on maternity and leave no plans. The other para quit unexpectedly. I was so stressed that I was losing weight and my hair. I was experiencing other health problems with my monthly cycle to the point that I almost passed out due to blood loss 1 month. When my husband's grandmother died, I was given grief about asking for a day off for her funeral. We hired another para 3 months after the first one left. We had subs filling in, and she was just awful. Everything that went wrong I was blamed for. A kid threw a book at my back and caused a bruise on my spine. By the end of April I turned in my 2-week notice. I felt no guilt. Here's for ex-teachers. Why do you gravitate towards working in liquor stores after? Real question. 3 past teachers of mine work in liquor stores now. Working with kids sucks. A girl hopped on my computer and erased the attendance for the day for whatever reason. When I wrote her a referral, she started stalking me around the room, crazy-eyed, making fists, ready to punch me. Even the other students in the class were scared she was about to jump me. I called security. Found out later that the girl, who was quite large and could probably cause some serious damage, was on H and other drugs. Administration didn't think that I needed to know. Still a teacher here but very nearly left the profession. During my EPD, early professional development, year, which here in Northern Ireland is your first year of teaching, I was hired by a school with a really rough reputation. Started in September and was given some of the toughest classes in the school, which I thought was a valuable learning experience even though it was really difficult. Principal called me into her office in November to tell me that she thought I was a terrible teacher and that she regretted ever hiring me. Direct quotes from her. Was given no constructive feedback or advice. Then was thrown back into the classroom for the rest of the day. Had no choice but to stay there as teaching jobs here are so few and far between. But this situation repeated itself in March, with her then telling me that I'd never be a good teacher and that I'd be doing the education system a favor if I quit and went back to working in the shop where I used to work. Also told me then that she had advertised my position and replaced me for the following school year without my prior knowledge. Then avoided her until June, when my classes sat their exams. GCSE class got 100% AC. Other classes did remarkably well. She had the nerve to offer me a reference on my last day, so I told her she could shove it up her ass. In another school now and so much happier. Have support of an amazing principal who regularly checks in and is impressed with the work I'm doing with my classes. Glad I stuck with it. Dang glad I read enough to get to a happy ending. I mean, obviously, the question presupposes a bad outcome, but I figured some people would have stories like yours. Congrats on doing well and sticking it out. Mother and father were teachers. For mother, when a parent, dad, tried to punch her in the face because his son had to repeat the year. The kid was a disaster and put zero effort in class. Later, someone scratched her car, put stickers on it and wrote slurs with liquid paper on the windows. She asked for anticipated retirement after this. For father, a male teacher, co-worker told him they should fix their problems with punches outside. Father is no small, so he stood above him and told him, okay, let's go. The other suddenly did not want to keep going. In the same day, a mother came because his son was not doing as good as she considered fair, and tried to seduce him. For both, not as teacher, but in a particular school, when a male co-worker told father they should have a private party, and if you behave, mother's name, dear, we will invite you. Father told him this was out of place and began to look for other schools to teach. For both, too much work, stress and problems, too little pay and benefits, to the point they had to wait half an hour to talk when they came back home before interacting with anyone. Second year teaching. My principal, first year in this role, age 30, and I had a disagreement about me using a microphone that the district supposedly spent a lot of money on. I taught art, it only got in the way. He didn't agree with my assessment and told me if I didn't use it he would hold me insubordinate. I used it. He then spent the rest of the year coming into my classroom to observe me at least once a week and would look for reasons to write me up. He once wrote me up for my lesson plans not being on the desk he expected them to be on when he walked in. In March he informed me that I would not be rehired and I didn't see him in my classroom again for the rest of the school year. I swore off the entire profession after that. I'm much happier as a nurse at a plasma clinic. What a douchebag. I had a senior finish the semester with a 40-something average and about 60% attendance. He was going to fail his senior year. On the day I was to submit grades, administration came to me with the student and asked what he can do to pass. I said take the class again. Well, that was the wrong answer apparently. I was forced to give him a few makeup assignments and a 70 to pass. He was such a troublemaker they just wanted him out. Found out 3 other teachers had similar experiences with this student. It was the time I was breaking up a fight between a 12-year-old boy and girl, and the boy turned around and punched me in the nuts as hard as he could. The school administrators did nothing. His mom was in the room with him. She did nothing. The general feeling was, this kid's mom pays tuition. Deal with it. I dealt with it by leaving the school, opening my own private school, and taking half the students with me. Pro revenge, please give more detail. I was an English teacher in China. I taught kindergarten and the little emperor syndrome really is a thing. The little boys in the class were total shoots, and the regular classroom teachers gave exactly 0 fricks in restraining them, though I saw a little girl get slapped for acting up. My breaking point was when I was in front of the class teaching and one little boy was running around in a circle right in front of me. I was ignoring him, but then he started slapping me really hard in the legs every time he went past me. On about the 6th circle, he wound up his arm to slap me and I just nailed him. Full on two-handed shove. The kid went flying, skidded across the floor looking pretty stunned, though didn't cry. Then the teachers took it upon themselves to come over and give him crap, make him apologize and sit back down. At that point I figured I'm literally assaulting 6-year-olds. Probably best that I get out of this country. I left with 3 months still on my contract. No regrets. LOL. The PE teacher at my son's school picked him up bodily when he was fighting another kid with a hockey stick. Then I assume he was told to send me an email with a full explanation and an apology. I'm like, look, I would have done the same thing. I ain't mad. They're so worried someone is gonna get so happy. Getting accused of being xenophobic because the majority of my office referrals were POC. Out of the 130 students in my classes, only 3 of them were white. Over 97% of my students were POC. Of course more of them are going to be referred due to sheer numbers. Racism is a thing, but my referrals were not an example of it. Administration didn't care, though. They'd rather I keep kids fighting and cussing in my classroom rather than appear xenophobic. Taught for 6 years in low-income schools and a nice public school. Every day and in almost every class I had to use Jedi mind tricks to redirect and confront blatantly disrespectful students. It was difficult to balance modeling appropriate responses to disrespect but also being the alpha male adult in the classroom. I felt like my job was becoming more and more about managing behavior and keeping track of records than it was about teaching, learning and those aha moments kids get. I was a really effective teacher, had good evaluations and good at behavior management, but still, not for me. My moment was realizing I was somewhat wound up before every class, every day not knowing what to expect and that I was not giving my best time and energy to my family at home as a result. All of my energy was being spent on the kids. Also, it's becoming increasingly respectable to be blatantly disrespectful to others. Ironically, the same students are the most incapable to handle disrespect from others and the easiest to offend. Beyond the 4 walls of the classroom and into real life, they'd get their asses beat. I'm a teacher in New York City, one of the better state's large cities to be a teacher in. My salary isn't glamorous but it's livable. If I worked a normal 40-hour work week, I would make about $40 an hour, but I'm expected to be at school, teaching or somehow managing groups of children for 9.5 hours a day, and on average, I spend another 15 hours each week lesson planning or grading, even putting in 65 hours a week. And I know some who work a lot more. The job is designed to be impossible. Hear me. Here in the United States, those that make educational laws are absolutely terrified of a meritocracy. They do not want most children to receive a quality education. So, they give you an impossible number of children to teach and an impossible amount of curriculum to cover. Instead of working to make class sizes smaller, they demand that you spend your own time and money earning more and more degrees. The kids can feel that something is wrong, that they're being denied access to a good education, but they don't know how or where to focus that energy, and so they, and often their families, blame the teachers and take it out on us. Today is actually my last day teaching. I gave it my best for 6 years and I just don't have another week in me. Honestly, I don't think my skill set is really geared toward teaching. But I've spent enough Saturdays writing lesson plans only to get called a B for trying to implement them. I wanted to be better, but I just can't anymore. I realized I hated 99% of my co-workers and disagreed with virtually every new initiative we were supposed to implement. Liked my time in the classroom with the students, but there's a lot more to teaching than that. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.